Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first virtual COSC meeting. My name is Marilyn Dennis, and I am the trustee who was elected in Wards 5 and 10, and I also serve you as your board chair. We are very pleased to have so many of you join us this evening. We have representatives from 114 schools who have registered to participate in tonight's virtual COSC meeting, and we're glad to see that this platform has encouraged so many more schools to participate in tonight's event. We have been working to hopefully have a glitch-free meeting with you tonight, but we thank you in advance for your patience, as this is the first time that we have had a meeting like this with this many people in attendance. So we're hoping all of our fingers are crossed for a glitch-free night, but thank you so much for your patience and understanding. Before we proceed any further, we would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. The agenda for tonight's meeting will include system updates and information sharing from each of your trustees. At the conclusion of the presentation, there will be an opportunity for your questions to be answered. Along with your trustees, we have our superintendents available tonight to answer your questions. I would like to welcome Chief Superintendent Chris Usi, Superintendent of School Improvement, Joe Pittman. With the retirement of Superintendent Yee, we are pleased to welcome Acting Superintendent of School Improvement, Darlene Unruh, our CFO, Brad Grundy, our Superintendent of Facilities and Environmental Services, Danny Breton, Superintendent of HR, Rob Armstrong, General Counsel, Kellyanne Fenney, and our Chief Communications Officer, Marla Martin Esposito. We will conclude questions at 8:25 p.m. for some closing remarks, and the meeting will wrap up at 8:30. In regard to your questions, we would invite you to type your questions into the Q&A box at any point during the presentation. You do not need to wait until the end of the presentation to submit your questions. Trustees Herdman and Adams will be moderating your questions this evening. Questions will be screened for common themes, and then a question will be selected to be published. You may not see your individual question published, but we will make an effort to ensure questions on a variety of topics and common themes are shared. As the questions appear on your screen, you can give the question a thumbs up, indicating your interest in that question. Our first update is in relation to our COVID response. In the first couple of weeks of October, 1.6% of our students and 0.5% of our staff were asked to quarantine. Many of these individuals have already returned to school or work. Thank you to our students, staff, and families for working with us to help keep our community healthy. We know that the protocols in place have made school look quite different than any of us have ever seen before, but we appreciate your continued diligence in this regard. As positive cases of COVID are identified, we communicate directly with impacted individuals and school communities. As you may be aware, positive cases are updated daily on our corporate website and on affected school websites. In anticipation of increased staff absences, we increased our substitute teacher roster by 30%, adding hundreds of additional substitute teachers to the system. As you may have heard, the CBE has been allocated $44.5 million in federal funding to aid in our COVID response. Those funds are being used to hire additional hub teachers and cleaning staff to help maintain healthy environments in our schools. And under recent updates, I would remind you to please check your school website and the corporate website regularly for updated information. We continue to take our lead from AHS and Alberta Education, and we are committed to providing you with the most up-to-date information possible. This next slide gives you a snapshot of the supplies that have been provided to schools as part of our COVID response. I would note that these quantities are reflective of the CBE purchased supplies and do not include those items provided by the Government of Alberta. As you can imagine, the initial procurement and distribution of these supplies was no simple task, and schools continue to have their supplies restocked as needed. I'd now like to invite Trustee Trina Herdman to provide an update on Hub Learning.
Thank you, Chair Dennis. So as you can see from the slide, we have about 18,000 students enrolled in our Hub online learning program. So if you think about 18,000 students, that is actually, it would actually be the 6th largest school board in Alberta. So as you can imagine, it was a huge logistical challenge to not only create basically a whole other huge school division, but to make sure that those students were still connected with their schools, which is what we really wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that students were still with the school because they might choose to return in February, or even if they come back next year, we still wanted them to feel part of their school community. So as you can see from the numbers here, the greatest number of students that chose Hub Learning were in the younger grades, and it decreases as we get to the older grades. The deadline for choosing for the Hub students to choose to go back to in-person learning will be January 8th of next year. Currently, we are not permitting any students who are currently in schools to go to the Hub for February, but this decision may be revisited. We have a lot of FAQs on our CBU website around Hub Learning. So if you have any questions about Hub Learning, please go through those. And then if you have any more, please type them in the Q&A box. I will now turn it over to Trustee Mike Bradshaw.
Thanks, Trina. So first, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today at the cost of missing the final US presidential debate. Or at least having one eye on that meeting. It's promising to be a very exciting train wreck to watch, so I'm glad you could make it to this. We've posted the submission dates to the minister on the slide, but there's been a lot more to this whole thing. So we received the ministerial order on May 21st. That was a really busy day for us. I think our entire team, trustees, administration was almost working around the clock to kind of walk us through that, and I think it's safe to say we've essentially been sprinting a marathon ever since that. So we were directed to provide a plan of action by July 31st. We've taken a project management approach to the work and have worked closely with Alberta Education to ensure we are meeting their timelines and evidentiary requirements. While it looks pretty simple on the slide, it's been thousands of hours of work for both trustees and administration to get this work completed by November 30th. By way of example, we recently passed a motion to update the terms of reference for our audit committee. To get that, we had at least a dozen meetings with administration, an audit working group, and the audit committee itself. We also surveyed audit and risk committees across Alberta and nationally to find best practices that would work for the CBE and provide clarity on what we were doing and how we were doing it to the public. And we've had to do that with kind of each of the ministerial orders. So it's been a lot of work. We still have a few items remaining, but that was according to our project management plan, and we are expecting to have those completed by mid-November. Out of this work we're hoping that ultimately we'll be able to serve our students and the citizens of Calgary better than before and clarify even further through policy the oversight in the role of trustees. And with that, I'll introduce Trustee Hrdlicka to speak about school council role and responsibilities.
Thank you, Trustee Bradshaw. Good evening, everyone. Parents and community members are important partners in public education, and through school councils, our partners make significant and meaningful contributions to the learning opportunities provided to CBE students. And you know, when we talk about school councils and principal roles, you just have to look to the CBE website to see the school council handbook to understand better if you're a new school council member or even an old one, to be able to look at that handbook, kind of see what those roles are. The actions of the school council is to reflect the expectations and beliefs of the school community. School council functions include things like consulting on annual school budgets, school development plans, advising the principal and board of trustees on school matters, sharing ideas and other information with other school councils, setting policies or creating bylaws that relate to the operations of school council, and there's so much more. And you'll see on the screen there, the different roles include the principal, the chair, the vice chair, key communicator, secretary, treasurer, and teacher. So the next point, when we're talking about meetings, and this has been something I've been contacted a few times by some school council chairs around the meetings for this upcoming school year. And remember, this information is available on the school council page on the CBE website. But school council meetings may continue for the 2020-21 school year. It should be held online to adhere to public health guidelines. As we're limiting the number of visitors to our schools, in-person school council meetings are not recommended. Should a school council choose to organize an in-person meeting, hosting at a CBE school or building will not be possible. As per the meetings online, Microsoft Teams is a CBE standard tool for online meetings and is highly recommended for school council meetings. This tool is the easiest way for CBE principals and other staff to participate, and using it does not result in any additional cost to school councils or the CBE. In saying that, school councils can choose to use other online meeting tools. Regardless of the tool being used, appropriate consideration should be given to privacy and security. Again, to find out about any questions you might have around the tools, please check out the website for the school council on the CBE website. Next, it's been purchasing COVID-related supplies has been an issue. There's been many questions about that from school councils, whether they can use funds to provide and to purchase COVID-related supplies. The answer is yes, as long as our regulations are followed. Again, you can find information on the website. Next is ASCA, Alberta School Council Association. Alberta School Council Association provides valuable resources such as workshops and presentations to support the work of our school councils. For your school to become a member, contact ASCA directly and they'll sign you up. Your school membership will be paid by the CBE Board of Trustees. Currently, ASCA has a survey for parents on re-entry that they would like parents to fill out. The survey closes at the end of the day on November 6th, so please check out the Alberta School Council website for that. I want to make mention that one of our parents was elected to the ASCA Provincial Board of Directors this past spring, Sheila Hobday. We're so happy to have Sheila's voice on the board to represent Calgary Voices. I'd also like to point out, trustees created 2 new liaison positions, the COSCA-ASCA trustee liaison positions. These positions were confirmed and Trustee Adams and myself were voted in to represent the board earlier in the month. These positions will take leadership in organizing these meetings and key communiques to schools, along with attending the ASCA events on behalf of the board. Next slide, please. All right, so this is often an issue that comes up throughout the years. School councils versus parent fundraising societies. So these are 2 different groups and functions. Just wanted to point this out tonight. School councils, they do exist to advise the principal and the board of trustees on school matters, including budget and school development plan. And it's not the primary role of school councils to fundraise or to lobby. Parent fundraising societies are a formal group of parents incorporated under the Society Act for the purpose of raising funds for the school. The society is a separate legal entity, and so we just wanted everyone to know that. If you don't know it already, again, check out the website, and there's more information there. And you can also at any time contact your trustee if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and I'd like to hand things over to Trustee Adams.
Thank you very much, Trustee Herlica. And welcome everyone to our first virtual meeting. Hopefully things are going well. So speaking of fundraising, we are pleased to say that fundraising campaigns can start again. We have new guidelines for our fun lunches now. So the fun lunches include Healthy Hunger, the Lunch Lady, pizza, that sort of thing. But it's really important that you talk to your principal for more information about how these lunches may proceed. We're also able to start doing online fundraisers. However, students should not be canvassing house to house in order to do these fundraisers. Distribution of the products may occur through the usual channels established with the school, i.e. pick up at a location, or students bringing the product home like their Purdy's chocolate, that kind of thing, as appropriate. But we have to say that all COVID-19 guidelines and health measures must be applied when doing these fundraisers. We will also be maintaining our no volunteers in the building approach. So this will also be a bit of a limiter. We are continuing to review this approach to volunteers, but right now with the ongoing impacts in schools, even though it is allowed provincially, we will not be changing that guideline at this time for CBE. It will be important for school councils to work with their principals around what may or may not make sense in that context for fundraising. And I'd like to move to the next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about Education Matters today. For those of you that don't know about Education Matters, they are a nonprofit foundation with a vision to promote and value excellence in public education in Calgary. I believe they started in 2003 from a group of trustees as well as some community members. So they do have a major grant application that happens every fall. Unfortunately, in consideration with the current situation with COVID-19 and the complications of school reentry, of course, combined with the uncertainty of pandemic brings to project planning and implementation, the Ed Matters Fall Grants will be revised for this year, and the application process will actually not proceed. However, the funding will be distributed for more immediate and high student needs in consultation with CBE administration. They do hope to resume accepting applications in the near future. However, Ed Matters also did launch an emergency back to school campaign to help schools provide appropriate supports to their students for the school year. The focus has been on backpacks loaded with supplies. So if you do still have students in need or would like to donate, please visit the Ed Matters site. And I would now like to pass it over to Trustee Hare to talk about the Education Matters online donations.
Okay, thanks, Althea. What's a fairly significant change this year is that Education Matters is taking over all the donation processing for the Calgary Board of Education. So as far as this donation processing transition, I guess the question is, what does that mean for school councils? Most of this information can be found on the Ed Matters website, but I will comment on some of the major ones. First, school council and parent societies can conduct online fundraising campaigns through the Education Matters online donation tool. It is really easy to set up and anyone can make a donation. The CBE will no longer set up new online fundraising accounts through third-party vendors such as Benevity and Canada Helps. Donors can easily direct any employer/community gift matches to the school of their choice, including through portals such as Benevity. Please contact Education Matters regarding donations involving matching gifts that use third-party vendors. Societies can request an individual fundraising page for their school and/or current initiative where donors can support their project and immediately receive an emailed tax receipt. They can also establish a fund at Education Matters to help track their fundraising success and receive fund statements from their accounts annually. All checks must be made out to Education Matters and either sent directly to them by their donor or via internal mail from your school. Education Matters, as Althea mentioned, is a resource for both the CBE and its school councils. Their online system is designed to reduce administrative tasks for volunteers and school staff, while Education Matters staff can offer advice and some support to community fundraising groups. I think it's essential to understand that for the present, you can continue with the process that you have set up, but by May, all donations have to pass through the Education Matters portals. I think one of the questions that will come up in regards to donations is there will be a fee of 5% on any donations. Now, some people may suggest that there has never been a fee in the past, and that's true. Essentially, the fee was absorbed by the Calgary Board of Education. Nonetheless, I'm sure we all can understand that there were costs. This movement to Ed Matters is almost a natural evolution and is somewhat in keeping with the attempt to reduce costs throughout the entire Calgary Board of Education. If you wish to contact Education Matters, naturally you can go to the website or you can call, and I'll say the number slowly, 403-817-7468. I'll repeat the number, 403-817-7468. And now I think it's back to Althea. At least I hope it's back to Althea.
Sure, it can be back to me, myself or Trustee Herdman. So we do have a few questions coming through the Q&A, which is great. So do please keep them coming because we did leave lots of time open for questions. So I think I'll just go up to the top because we have a few questions around school council. So the first question on top here is, our school council chair has received mixed messages on managing parent attendance in council meetings. Is the council required to manage attendance using RSVP and private invitations, or can she use shared invitations and use the meeting lobby system to filter joiners? Sorry, is it Superintendent Pittman who may be able to answer that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Trustee Adams. So utilizing the lobby admittance system is probably the best way for you to be able to manage without having to do everything via private invitation. What you do need to require, though, is make sure that individuals have identified themselves clearly so that you're aware. But utilizing the lobby system will allow you to manage attendance. It will also allow you to remove attendees if there was some issue that needed to be managed there. So that's one of the big reasons why Microsoft Teams has proven to be a very handy tool for us.
Thank you, Superintendent Pittman. Again, with school councils, the question is, I'm wondering why school councils are not allowed to purchase plexiglass for our schools. Can you please clarify the reasoning behind that answer? Will CBE be providing it for our schools? Superintendent Pittman, I think that might be back to you.
Maybe I can take that one. This is Superintendent Danny Breton. Just to share with you that the policy that we have around acrylic barriers or plexiglass was informed, of course, with our consultations with Alberta Health Services, and is really focused on high traffic areas, so the main offices. Within a classroom, it really makes no difference at the end of the day whether or not there is a plexiglass barrier. The entire cohort is determined to be a close contact, and so all students would end up having to self-isolate irrespective. And so given the high cost of the barriers, given the additional complexity that it brings in terms of the cleaning requirements, because now all of a sudden it's not just the chair and the desk, but in addition to that, all of the barriers themselves, and the high costs again of the barriers themselves, and the fact that ultimately they don't really provide any advantage. We've determined that those would not be allowed to go into our schools within the classrooms, but certainly used in those high traffic areas.
Thank you very much. The next question I have here is, can the Ask a Survey link be sent out by principal via school messenger or other means to families? I believe I can go ahead and answer. I believe that we can do that. And yeah, I don't see why we can't make that available. I will move on to the next question. How will fun lunches be distributed to kids without extra volunteers in schools? Superintendent Pittman?
Hello again. You know, I think first of all, I'm just going to address the volunteers in schools because it's something that we're really grappling with, and on every level. It is a challenge, but I really appreciate people understanding that our main goal is to limit any other potential exposures or complexities that can be managed and avoided. So that particular decision point certainly does impact so many different pieces. However, we have had to really focus in on how to support maintaining schools as open, given the number of other cases that have impacted our schools. In the context of fun lunch distribution or distribution of, there's a question later on as well that is specific to the distribution related to fundraiser materials. This may be a time where, first of all, the determination to offer fun lunches or to do certain types of fundraisers, it may be an opportunity for school councils to really evaluate whether or not those should occur at this time. In some of our schools, it may be able to be facilitated specific to the fun lunch, just based on how the school is organized. And in other schools, having fun lunches may actually be really challenging, not solely because of volunteers, but in fact due to the range of staggered times and locations that are required. So there are many contextual variables to this particular one that may or may not, even though fun lunches could be allowed, it may be in your best interest not to pursue them at this time. And it may be that in some schools, based on the way staff are organized and the lunch eating time is organized, that it can be easily facilitated, and in others it may not be. We recognize that that is absolutely a challenge. If you don't mind, Trustee Adams, could I just address the distribution related to fundraiser materials as well?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so in terms of distribution of fundraising goods, again, this would be an example of where you may need to consider alternate pickup locations, as was suggested, though having certainly can appreciate the desire not to have a personal address. In other, depending on the type of fundraiser, also has implications for the amount of organization of materials. In some cases, materials that are ordered come well labeled, and the distribution of those to students in classrooms can occur. But again, anytime, while fundraisers are a huge support to schools, and our school councils make an incredible difference to that end, you may wish to hold off on those at this time simply due to some of the logistics. We are continuing to review any implications to any of our restrictions where we are maintaining restrictions. There's just a really complex trickle-down effect when we open up volunteers on certain levels, and it's hard to restrict and manage some of those pieces. So we're trying to be thoughtful and judicious, recognizing the impact that it does have on other events that you are planning.
Thank you very much. The next question we have here is about hub learning. Are there specific guidelines for principals on how to ensure that their hub students are connected with the school activities they do online? Will students on hub not being taught by teachers within their home school, what is the expectation or practice by teachers related to the connection with the students' home schools? Superintendent Pittman, is that back to you?
It is, yes. This is such it becomes increasingly complex depending on the student's grade level and the various courses as well. Having said that, there are a few guidelines that we have provided to schools where we want to make sure that our families who are registered or students who attend the hub, that families are still making sure that they receive all of their school communications. And one of the pieces as well, especially to different online activities that may be occurring where it would absolutely be appropriate and more than encouraged for students in the hub to be joining in, making those available on an ongoing basis to staff or to their students' families, and making note of those is going to be an important element. We know that there's been a lot of focus on ensuring that we have everyone in the right places and all the communication is going where it needs to go. We've had some challenges with correct emails, etc., and sometimes information has been missed. And so improving that continues to be an important piece. If you are finding spots where individuals are not receiving information from their community or their home school, we want to make sure that that's going forward. So please contact the principal to flag that particular issue. But we have provided guidance to our schools to maintain supports in that area, because again, as was referenced, as trustees were sharing regarding the hub, our goal is to build connection wherever we are able to do so, recognizing that we have staff from across the city, teaching students from across the city to ensure we are able to meet the demand.
Thank you very much. There's another question here on Hub. It says, in terms of Hub learning, it does seem the workload, especially for high school students, is really very high. This is understandable as work and projects. Sorry, my screen's really small. I should find a way to make the font bigger. This is understandable as work and projects are the main way for teachers to see the students' understanding, as they have no real-time indicators and even less testing options. We are wondering, though, for mental health and wellness, whether there can be some consistency in teacher expectations doing work on weekends and attending classes on PD days.
The caring for mental health and wellness and workload is absolutely an important element in all of our classes, whether they be in person or online. The question that is around where the workload is at can be a personal one as well, and can vary based on the type of courses that a student is registered in. The point that is made around PD days or other non-instructional days is an important one, and I think while we've had to have differences in parent-teacher interviews, and information will be, if it hasn't already come out via School Messenger, there are specific messages for Hub parent-teacher interviews, but we know that there are times where absolutely students need that break. The management of workload, if there is significant challenges occurring for individual students, we want to make sure that they're still able to reach out to their guidance counselors to communicate those concerns, especially because for some of our students, they will have teachers who are not at their high school, and because of the range of courses they may be taking, the level of coordination about the assignment of work at key times may be a bit challenging, and so please do raise those with the school guidance counselor, well, with the teachers first and foremost, but then also with your school guidance counselor, because there may be other elements that we need to attend to differently as well.
Thank you. And just continuing with Hub, the question right below that is, are principals unable to answer my questions when it comes to Hub learning? Who do we reach out to when we have questions about Hub?
One, in terms of specific, if the questions are specific to a child's teacher or assignments, the principal should be able to answer those and be able to answer overall questions around the Hub. If you're not finding the level of answers or responses that you need related to your questions, please do reach out to the area office, and they will make sure that you are either put in touch with the correct person to provide you information with specificity or other things that they may need to understand. We are providing regular updates to our principals and making sure that, recognizing that we've got over 700 teachers from across the city working with students. One of the routines we've changed is our principals at all of our schools are receiving the teacher hub updates on the Friday before they go out on the Monday, and wanting to make sure that each of our school principals is able to have that information. I would say that our school principals are managing many different elements in their buildings and online as well, and at the same time sometimes positive cases, and so certainly appreciate the amount of information that is coming in to their inboxes. So if you are, as I said, if you're experiencing challenges, please do reach out to the area office and we'll make sure that that gets addressed.
Thank you. I'm just going to continue on with some more hub questions as we do have a few more. The next one here is the hub workload is heavy. Do the teachers each have knowledge of what the other teachers are assigning each student?
If this is a question, so first of all, we've given direction around the level of workload was described and is utilized on the flat sheets that are included on the hub site. And those particular guidelines were in place to address some of this variability. And so if we're seeing a trend here, and I really do appreciate these questions being raised because it's a helpful check, and I actually have a hub check-in meeting at a range of different levels this week. So thank you for this. It's excellent timing. The knowledge of what other teachers are assigning each student, if it is in the middle school, junior high level teachers typically should have a sense because they're assigned to cohorts of students and it's a set schedule that is the same. For our high school students, again, this becomes highly variable simply because they may be accessing 2 courses that are taught by teachers in their home school, but then because of the courses they were needing to continue on their high school pathway, they may be having teachers from another school. And so the coordination and discussion between the high school teachers in the hub is not something that, barring the fact of teachers being in the same building or from the same building, there may be some implications there, and that's where I go back again to the guidelines related to the course and the amount of independent work that should be expected per week on each course. I will be checking in on this further, so again, thank you for the question.
Okay, one more on hub and then I'll give you a little break. Why are the hub parent-teacher interviews happening so late? There should be more emphasis on having them connect one-on-one with parents much sooner than that.
So we scheduled the hub high school parent-teacher interviews a few weeks after the regular high school interviews, and that was due to the fact that we did have the delay in starting up the high school hub, and we wanted to make sure that teachers had an opportunity and students had an opportunity to complete a valuable amount of actual work and assessment so that the feedback and the discussion was based on quality information as opposed to just starting out. So that was an important element there. And then our middle school and elementary interviews were scheduled so that we could ensure that we weren't intruding in on other assignments or other times when other schools were also having their parent-teacher interviews. So there were some scheduling challenges in there. I would say always that parents should feel confident, and please do not hesitate to reach out to your child's teacher to check in or ask for feedback as to how things are going. The only piece that I would put a little bit of boundary around that is sometimes when we have, we've all become very accustomed to interacting online, and personally I can speak to the fact that my boundaries are maybe, my response times are expected to be pretty immediate, and it's completely understandable, but we also need to make sure that we're allowing for some space in there. But please do not hesitate to reach out around those pieces, especially if you've got concerns or questions.
Thank you so much. So the next question is around lockers. Why is the CBE holding back on allowing lockers to be used by middle school students? And I believe it's also by high school students. I don't believe we allow any lockers just yet. Superintendent Breton, would that be for you?
I can certainly speak to that, Trustee Adams. And so we, of course, continue to monitor the policies and guidance provided to us by Alberta Education and Alberta Health Services. And now that there has been that relaxation in terms of the use of lockers, we are working currently on updating our reentry plan with the latest information from the early October update from Alberta Education on the reentry guidance. So I would say that in the very near future, we will be issuing guidance to schools on the use of lockers that conform with those requirements. So high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools would be the same guidance.
Thank you very much. The next question is regarding volunteers. The question is, could we have parent volunteers outside for distribution of fundraising and fun lunches?
I'm pausing here. You know, there's always a gray area. At this time, I think any management, and we have said that volunteers involved inside or outside at this time, we are discouraging simply due to the level of other areas of challenge that are then created as a result. Again, as I said, we'll continue, and honestly, some of the other suggestions or things that people are bringing up is certainly appreciated and are things that we can always bring back to the task force. But at this time, no, I would not say that school or volunteers organizing everything outside, given some of the weather today, may not be advisable either at this time.
Thank you. Sticking with fundraising, the question is, would it be safe to say that possibly it may be best to do a check drives as a fundraising alternative this year? And since physical check wouldn't be recommended, is there a way to securely set up an online donation for specific schools instead of that has already been established and recommended for use by CBE? Trustee Hare, did you want to talk a little bit about Ed Matters and the online donation?
Yeah, I can try to give that a go. Thanks, Althea. I think that's a real possibility. As I indicated earlier, I would suggest you contact Ed Matters, clarify exactly what you're intending to do, and I'm sure they can assist you in setting up whatever you're wishing to do. Just one comment further, clearly, and it's somewhat COVID related, the recommendation is to stay away from cash. Obviously, checks or that kind of issue is where we're looking for. But I think those kind of check donations are a reasonable thing to take place at this point in time. And Ed Matters, Marilyn Field, the director there, would greatly appreciate your contacting them, and I'm sure they'd be of great assistance.
Thank you very much, Trustee Hare. The next question is about school fees, particularly for school supplies. We as parents were charged $40 for school supplies, but the students are reporting that they do not have any. Why are we paying $40 if sufficient supplies are not supplied for the students?
Hi, Trustee Adams. It's Darlene Unruh, and I'm happy to take this question. So parents recognizing that our classrooms do look a little bit different this year. I'm sure students are recognizing a much more minimalistic approach, but if any of your children are claiming that they do not have sufficient supplies, first place of contact would certainly be with your child's classroom teacher to let them know and to ask the question there. And if the response that you receive you still have additional questions, I would ask you to follow up with the school principal.
Thank you so much. We have another question about Hub and school councils. The question is, should school councils be including Hub parents in meetings? How do we support these parents if they have questions and issues, things that would usually be answered by a principal?
That's a really awesome inclusion of families who are often working through all kinds of different pieces for a range of reasons. And so making sure that your school council emails are going to all parents, including Hub parents, will be important. And also explicitly identifying that school count, just because a family may be registered in Hub, that being part of school council is still an important and valued thing, is certainly helpful and important. So I would just maybe encourage you in your emails and communication, and we've certainly had to continue to remind ourselves of that as well, that we need to communicate with all of our families, no matter which way our students are accessing instruction.
Thank you. Now I have a few more questions now that are showing up on Hub. The next one is Hub Elementary Grade 5. The students connected to my Hub children aren't finding that the work is enough. Most are completing their work before instructional sessions are provided.
I noticed that there's a few questions regarding Hub and access to, or questions around course load, either too much or too little. Again, the first point of contact would always be checking in with the teacher around sharing that perspective and questions that you may have, then following up with the school principal. And there's a question later around if you're not completely feeling as though your question or concerns have been addressed, then would encourage you to check in with area office as well. And it's helpful because we continue to gather trends, because we had our first starting up and all of the things around the startup. Now we're level setting and we need to check in and adjust. This is a completely new process. The Hub model is not just about starting up an online school. There are many variables attached to it, and so really appreciate the questions that are brought forward to teachers, then to principals, then to area office. As a system, we're collecting information, we're checking in and looking at what those trends are, and we'll make course corrections as we go.
Thank you. Sticking with Hub, the next question is, some parents have asked, why can they not switch to Hub throughout the year, especially with cases rising?
Without going into too much detail about what's all entailed with reassigning staff and making sure that we have allocated resources appropriately based on the numbers of enrollment for in-school and for Hub. The challenges of balancing both scenarios while still also accounting for changing decisions is one that is a bit challenging also when we're trying to maintain stability during a time where stability is sometimes fleeting, it feels, as we continue to move through the pandemic. So we have, and we started off, we did some very careful analysis around the impacts of percentages of in and out of Hub in the middle of the year, and possible impacts that could have, or disruptions that would have on both in-person students as well as students online. For example, if we have a group of students, and of course it's never all from one grade, never all from one class, never all from one school, and never equally from any, we tend to then run the challenge of determining what the tipping point is of having a teacher who's currently teaching in person move to teach online, or a teacher who's teaching online in Hub be required to leave some of their students and go teach full-time in person. And so having both scenarios occur really creates challenges with stability for other students who may not be making a choice for something different, but then really increase another level of disruption. And in some grades and stages, there may be reasons why that could occur, but from across the system and mid-year, the relationships that are being built, the routines that are being built are important. We recognize the concern over an increase in positive cases. I would say though, and I know this is some of the pieces later, while we have had a large number of cases in Calgary, we have also managed those cases in our schools well. We have not seen comparatively, and the feedback from AHS is that in terms of additional risk, the quarantine measures, the health measures, all of those pieces are working well overall, and they are pleased with, despite rising cases, the responses in schools.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back up to, oh, sorry, no, there's one more question about this, about substitutes. Are hub teachers supposed to have substitutes when they are away?
We have been booking substitutes for hub teachers. There have been some circumstances similar to in-person learning where we have been unable to provide coverage for a hub teacher absence. And so it is not intentional. But those circumstances have occurred both for in-person and for teachers teaching in the hub online.
Thank you. Now there's a question about music classes. Music classes now consist of clapping and theory. Is there any thought given to perhaps replacing music with a group therapy for students to share their thoughts, feelings, concerns regarding how COVID has impacted them?
Well, our music guidelines have just been updated to allow for a range and to be in line with Alberta Education Guidelines. And that information was just announced to the system today, actually. And so we are providing re-entry plan updates next week formally, but teachers will be receiving information regarding the ability to engage in different instruction, still with restrictions and modifications, but certainly an expansion. I don't believe that's necessarily the point of the question, though, is also an opportunity for children to talk about their experiences with COVID. And this has been an ongoing area where we've been supplying resources to schools and created student resources together with Alberta Health Services and Calgary Catholic School Division, Edmonton Public School Division, and Edmonton Catholic School Division, specific to supporting discussions with students and resources around COVID and the experience. I would say that now we've gotten into a bit of a routine. Some of our schools are doing and addressing these particular challenges in different ways, and it may be through class time, or in other contexts, it may be through various gatherings with students online or different chat times where they're actually leveraging technology in the school in some fairly creative ways.
Thank you. We're going to switch a little bit to some fundraising questions. If school staff are willing to distribute healthy hunger lunches to their class on behalf of school council, then are we able to have a fun lunch fundraiser? Superintendent Pittman, I don't know if that's back to you. I'm not sure.
I apologize.
Sorry, I was going to say I can start. It's Marla,
Okay.
and I will make sure that the Fun Lunch guidelines are posted on the corporate site. They are on our internal website, but we'll make sure that they're there. So in the guidelines, we do say that if the principal is willing to support the Fun Lunch and have staff available to be able to distribute it, then that's a possibility. But what I would say is work with your principal, and as Joe has stated, every school is different. There's multiple times for lunch, and maybe there's some difficulty with supervision and so forth. So just reach out to your principal and see if that is an option, given that volunteers in the schools are not allowed at this time.
Thank you so much. Keeping along with school councils, the next question is, are school councils still allowed to purchase items for our schools outside of COVID supplies, or is there a spending freeze?
So it's Brad Grundy, Chief Financial Officer. I would say, yeah, we're happy to accept contributions of things that have been discussed with the school principal to make sure that they are, appropriate for the school environment. We would ask, though, that you ensure that if it's things like technology, there is a process that the principal will have to run any technology acquisitions through, and that we provide the time and space for them to work through that process. But absolutely, if councils want to support their school with non-COVID related supplies, we're happy to accommodate that.
Great, thank you. The next question is it's about COVID cases itself. It says, what is the expectation related to positive COVID cases in classes to parents whose children are directly affected? How much information is expected to be shared?
Thank you for that question. It's a really important one to reinforce, as it's a stressful and challenging situation for anyone. First of all, it's important to highlight that the CBE takes action based on the direction from Alberta Health Services. And so what occurs when there is a positive case for a student attached to the school, the parent will receive an update, a test notification. That notification is often done prior to AHS follow. AHS will follow up after that notification is provided. The parent may determine how you share information. AHS, in terms of the school though, AHS notifies the school, and that is when we take action, because AHS has to complete their investigation and provide us with the direction regarding the dates of contagion and when students or which students are required to isolate for which days. In some cases, because of, and actually a high number of positive COVID cases of students, we have actually had to take no action because the student was not at school while infectious, and AHS is the one to determine that. You can appreciate that it's really important for us to confirm before we send hundreds or even a class of students home to isolate and follow AHS direction. So we take our direction and respond to COVID cases based on what AHS shares with us, not what the parent shares with us. So even if a parent does give a school information regarding a positive COVID test, AHS gives us the direction and confirm that we do not take action without their direction.
Thank you very much. The next question is, I believe, is going to be for Chair Dennis. The question is, I would like to know if CBE is planning to respond to yesterday's leaked K-4 social studies curriculum document. I'm shocked and furious that I have to tell my political representatives in 2020 that it's not appropriate to be teaching Bible verses in social studies, or that we need to be teaching reconciliation in elementary curriculum. The ATA has responded recommending these changes be rejected.
Thank you so much, and that is a great question. I have to be honest, I always find it quite fascinating when certain things are leaked out into the public space when they haven't been fully cooked yet, because the discussion in the public is always really interesting on it. I guess I would say, school boards and classroom teachers can make decisions around, how the program of studies is delivered, in our classrooms, but, we do not make decisions around curriculum itself. That is solely the responsibility of the province. We have very little influence in terms of what curriculum looks like. However, certainly any opportunity that we'd be given to, engage in what curriculum development would look like, the system would certainly jump at the chance to be able to have some input on that. We have had teachers in the CBE who have participated in curriculum development in the past, and certainly we would continue to take advantage of those opportunities as we can. But at this time, like I say, we do not set curriculum. It is the province that sets curriculum.
Thanks, Marilyn. The next question is about the federal dollars. The question is, how many hub teachers were hired with federal dollars, and in relation, were class sizes in person reduced or increased as a result? What are the current average class sizes in our schools right now?
So once again, it's Brad Grundy, Chief Financial Officer. I'll start off. So the CBE has hired an incremental, so when I say incremental, I mean in addition to the number of teachers we would have hired for a normal 2020-21 school year, we hired an incremental 166 teachers so far to support the hub model at approximately $17 million on an annual basis. Before I get to the federal dollars, I'd just like to highlight that we are also spending an additional $15 million for cleaning staff. We have made provisions for additional substitute teachers at the cost of $10 million. There are additional cleaning supplies and other personal protective equipment for about $8 million. And then there was some capital equipment and some other sort of bits and pieces. So the total amount that the CBE is spending to support school in a COVID environment is approximately $55 million. The federal money, as you heard previously, was $44.5 million. So when we take that together, the federal money does not yet, or has not, or will not cover off the full cost of sort of what we're calling re-entry for this school year. So just to give you that context. In terms of impact on class sizes, I will turn that over to my perhaps school improvement colleagues or my colleague from Facilities and Environmental Services.
I'll start, and feel free, Darlene, if there's anything else you'd like to add. In the context of class sizes in both in-person and also in other areas on the hub, the shift of students to the hub and the hiring of additional teachers for that in some schools would have supported the class size to be maintained at a smaller level. In other schools, it may have created a need because of the number of students who registered for hub in total from that grade in a school, may not have worked out to be able to assign a teacher, but there was still a significant number who are not attending in person. And when we did the analysis, then there are still some schools that will have been impacted as a result of a class combined. The class size average was a calculation that was run through the class size initiative that was set up through Alberta Education, and we had specific requirements for data entry on that. That class size tool has been removed, and so we will still be working with each of our schools to look at where their pressure points are and continue to see and determine if we need to address those. An example that I would give is our kindergarten classes. In many cases, we had kindergarten families not register or hold off actually entering into school. And then now we are seeing them come into school. The challenge has been, because it's after September 30th, we've seen we wouldn't be able to count them towards our official student count. And so we've had to really plan carefully to be able to address some of those changes in enrollment and make sure that we're able to address and have set up funds to be able to address schools where class sizes may have started low, but then have increased.
Just to add to that, Joe, at this time of the year, every year, when we look at the organization, and structures within our schools regarding class size and configurations. It does give us an opportunity as ed directors work alongside their principals to identify and review any pressure points that we're recognizing in schools. And so schools are just in the throes of working with their educational directors over the next couple of weeks to bring that information forward.
That's great. Thank you so much. The next question is about COVID and positive cases in class. It says, regards to COVID and positive cases, we've heard that a positive case in a classroom doesn't necessarily warrant every family in the classroom is notified, just those immediately around the sick student. Especially in elementary school, kids move around. I realize that this is an AHS directive, but why is it a reality that not every family in a classroom would be notified if there was a confirmed case in a classroom?
I can take this one. So what I can confirm, because I directly manage all of these positive cases, is that we always quarantine the entire class. And we provide the contacts for all students who were in attendance for that class. Where there could be a difference is when we have, and this is why attendance records really matter, we cannot require that a student isolate when they were not in attendance on the date of quarantine. And so that is where there would be some differences. It would be not because of where they were seated. It would only be because they were identified as being absent on the dates where exposure may or was identified by AHS as having occurred. Otherwise, we always isolate the entire class associated or all associated courses when there is an identified positive COVID student case.
Thank you. The next is we have a couple of questions about masks. So the first one is, there are no municipal bylaws about wearing masks while outside. There are a lot of parents during bell times picking up students on CBE property not wearing masks. While this may be low risk for transmission, what is the CBE's policy on parents wearing masks outside around so many students and not following the 2-meter distance?
And so maybe I can take that one. This is Danny Breton again. And so for sure, the policy for the CBE vis-a-vis students is that when they're outdoors on CBE property, they're maintaining the physical distancing and wearing masks. And when it comes time for parents to come and pick up their children, the expectation there would be that they would be maintaining the physical distancing. And so there is no requirement for them to be wearing masks. But that, again, they maintain the physical distancing. The idea here being, of course, that they wouldn't be intermingling and associating with each other as students might be during the school day.
Thank you so much. General Counsel Fenny, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Danny covered what the approach is. I think this issue was raised through other channels, and we are in the process of updating our mask protocol to reflect more recent direction from the ministry around school reentry. And we can certainly encourage parents to either don a mask when they're dropping off their kids, and or as Superintendent Breton has indicated, maintain that 2 meters of physical distancing, but outside not required by law. So we rely on parents to follow the other health measures that have been put in place.
Thank you so much. There's another question about masks. Kids are reporting that they are not getting any mask breaks while in class. Are kids now expected to wear a mask every day, all day long?
So I'm happy to start and perhaps have Superintendent Pittman or Superintendent Breton support. The mask guidelines do contemplate students getting mask breaks throughout the day, as there's recognition that having a mask on all day can be a challenge. The length of the mass breaks and the frequency of those is, however, going to vary depending on the school and the classroom configuration, and in particular, how close students are together in the classroom, and whether they're at desks or perhaps at shared tables, and those other sort of physical features that place some limitation on our ability to create more than 2 meters of distance. And so the sort of nature and the variety of the breaks may vary, but we certainly have asked our schools to provide those breaks to students. And what I would say to parents is, if your specific child is reporting that they're not getting sufficient breaks, then the best place to start is with the classroom teacher and the principal, and confirm what their approach is and how frequently they're offering them. I know some classrooms are, providing spaces where students can take a bit of a break in the classroom itself, but it really does vary school to school because of the differences in the way our classrooms are configured and how much space are available in the variety of classrooms that we have across our district.
Thank you so much. The next question is about council meetings. So Trustee Herlick, I'll put this one to you. Are trustees accepting council meeting invitations on the Teams platform?
Sorry about that. My mic was playing tricks on me. Yes, at any point, we encourage our school councils to connect with our trustees, and we are always open to coming to school council meetings. That's a great question. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. The next question is, has the education system in Alberta, or CBE, considered adjusting their academic requirements and expectations of students, especially at the higher levels?
I can take that one. So one of the things that we have certainly worked hard on and will be continuing to reinforce is how it is students are assessed, and in the context of their experience. We know that there are many reasons for disruption to the learning of students in the course of this year. Not all are directly related to a positive COVID-19 case. There's requirements for families and students to stay home when sick in a different way this year. There are those same requirements for our staff and increased disruption as a result of those important choices for safety. And we've provided assessment guidance to our staff and continue to build an understanding of how it is we assess in a way that reflects both the program of studies, the grade level, and ensuring that the necessary supports are in place for students to engage fully based on their experiences. This is an adjustment for everybody. It's not only adjustment for students, it's also for many of our teachers who've been personally impacted as well in their own families. And so managing all of those pieces has been important. In terms of the province, you saw that the Ministry of Education allowed that diploma examinations be optional for November. We are awaiting the exam or the decision, I'll say, for January and for the remainder of the year. Certainly there are a range of impacts, and never mind the amount of cleaning that must occur between classes, different types of schedules for students moving throughout buildings that mean that our students are spending less time learning, and we want to attend to those things and be responsive and respectful of that.
Thank you so much. The next question is, has CBE hired back the psychology department that was laid off in the spring?
The short answer to that is yes. While there are always changes to staffing levels, those layoffs were rescinded.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the contingency plan for online learning in the event of another lockdown, and whether any other school boards were consulted to review what went well? Other school boards in the province seem to be able to pivot quite quickly to online learning and prove far more successful outcome than that of CBE's efforts.
Thanks for that. What I would say is that there's been significant improvements in the access of all of our staff to key learning platforms for our elementary schools. For all of our elementary schools, it is Google Classroom. Some of our middle junior high schools also use Google Classroom. Otherwise, it's D2L for our middle juniors and our high school students. This year, all of our teachers were expected to ensure that they had an online presence and to consider the design of how they make learning accessible online should they be required to pivot. We've had, based on our cases, hundreds of classrooms that have had to move to online learning for a range of dates. That structure, granted, is different than if we were to move to full-time online learning based on a lockdown. We have worked with the 3 other Metro school boards reviewing our various practices. We've also worked specifically on all of our video and recording guidelines to ensure that we're providing as much flexibility for our staff to be able to instruct in that environment, while also making sure that we are attending to the privacy concerns and the privacy requirements that we need to follow. There's certainly been a fair amount of information in the news lately around some of the privacy concerns that do relate to increased access to online instruction. And what I would say is that all things come with a trade-off, and the CBE has determined to be very cognizant and sensitive to the privacy concerns for students, and rightly so. Sometimes that does cause people to say, why can't we have a lot more flexibility than we have? And I think it is really important to make sure that we understand that what might seem okay in one individual circumstance when spread out across 125,000 plus students may not be. Back to the question, also upcoming on October 30th, we have a System PD Day, and we've increased massively all of our professional learning opportunities and ongoing communities of practice for teachers to enhance and increase their competence in various tools that they're wanting to use, and also specifically their confidence in taking risks with those. So we're really pleased with where that's at, and are absolutely ready to transition should we be required to.
Thank you very much. So I'm just scrolling down on the questions here. I believe we're getting to most of them. Oh, here's one on cell phones. What's the CBE's stance on cell phone use in middle school? The children in my daughter's school seem to be on their phones all day long, to the point where we have not allowed our children to bring their phones to school anymore because they are so distracting. I wish there were stronger restrictions around cell phone use during class time, and I don't think teachers should ever ask children to use their cell phones for school-related tasks.
There are many different views on cell phones and use. Certainly, our schools are required to have a digital citizenship plan, and each of our schools, based on their context, does have a specific cell phone use policy. And so in terms of your specific circumstance, I would encourage you to speak with your child's teacher and or the school principal regarding the cell phone policy and share your concerns. We've had schools do some fairly impressive engagement with both students and families to collectively determine approaches and recognize the various ways in which cell phones can be a tool, and also ways in which it may be in the best interest of everyone to not be accessing them.
Thank you so much. The next question, I believe, is going to be for Chair Dennis. The question is, why does the CBE not respond to the K-4 social studies curriculum? Does the CBE not have or utilize its voice to Alberta education?
Thank you. And again, another great question. You know, I'm happy to elaborate further, I guess, on the answer I gave earlier, and I apologize if some folks found that that was insufficient. You know, at this time, we're not aware of any, you know, final decisions being made around curriculum. What we do know is that not all recommendations make it into the final draft. You know, whether that be legislation, curriculum, regulations, and so on. We certainly take advantage of every opportunity presented to us to provide feedback and to share our best thinking. And certainly we do, in cases, take, you know, the initiative to provide an opinion or express a concern, or you know, to work through our provincial organization, even to see if there is, you know, similar thinking or similar interest, you know, coming from other school boards. Look for opportunities to partner with other school boards also to lend a voice to certain issues. You know, so certainly we do try our best to be proactive around any sort of issues that are bubbling up in the province. But in terms of the curriculum, you know, because we have not yet seen a draft of a proposed new curriculum, you know, at this time we don't have anything concrete to comment on. You know, what we're seeing in the media is, you know, some recommendations, like say we have not seen, you know, all of the documents related to, you know, some of the recommendations that are coming forward to make suggestions around the new curriculum. And so, you know, once we have, you know, some increased facts and some items in front of us that we can have conversations about, we'll certainly do that. And like I say, we definitely try to take advantage of every opportunity that we have to be able to provide our best thinking and input in terms of whether it be, like say, legislation, regulation, curriculum, or what have you. So I hope that's a more sufficient answer and maybe, you know, sort of satisfies what folks are after, but I know it can be difficult to sort of see what it is that we're doing behind the scenes, but I can assure you that we consistently are paying attention to what is happening in the province, and certainly take advantage of every opportunity to provide some input whenever we can.
That's great. Thanks so much. I think we have time for just one more question. We do have a couple of questions actually here that are about phys ed, and of course currently being outdoors, but now they're wondering if there's going to be new guidelines as we move into the winter months. And there's a couple of questions about that, but they're both kind of around the same theme there.
Thank you, Trustee Adams. And to the other point that was made around identifying, it's Joe Pittman, Superintendent of School Improvement. In terms of phys ed, absolutely phys ed may take place indoors. We have been encouraging schools to utilize out of doors as much as possible. And there are guidelines regarding and recommendations and exemplars of how it is teachers can support quality physical education that is not repeating the same activity day in and day out, and supporting the important physical development of our students. And so guidance and continued review of that guidance based on an increase of students utilizing the gym will be reviewed. However, it is important to note, and we've heard a couple of things, you know, where the assumption is that the gym is closed. Gyms are available, though we also have to acknowledge that for some of our schools, the ways in which they would have delivered the physical education curriculum in the gym does have to look different now based on their class sizes and cohorting, because we don't want to have, when we've got multiple classes in a gym, before they may have been shared and had different shared experiences. At this time, we have to keep those classes separate. And so that will change some of the activities. Equipment has to be cleaned in between. And one of the things, and it seems really simplistic, and I have to remind myself of this often, even as an adult, is washing your hands with soap and water or utilizing hand sanitizer is one of the most important mitigating health measures.
Thank you so much. So we do have time for one final question. It's about technology. And the question is, with technology being part of the CBE's 3-year plan, and in light of COVID, will the CBE be increasing their technology in schools so assemblies can be held virtually?
I can address this one, and feel free, Brad Grundy, if you'd like to jump in. It's Joe again. Our schools, each of our schools' technology in the terms of how they would support an assembly may be somewhat different. While we do have smart boards in our schools, for some of our schools, they utilize different recording equipment or different ways of actually being able to live stream. There have been some very creative approaches taken, and with Remembrance Day upcoming, we've certainly provided some guidance around those particular Remembrance Day assemblies, as they are an important one. And we will continue to work with our schools around responsible technology purchases. Sometimes immediate need can turn into a more expensive proposition down the road. And so, as always, we work carefully with our ITS and Client Technology Services department. I'm a little bit of a techie. I really like these things and new opportunities, but we have to be thoughtful on making sure that what is purchased is sustainable and supportable.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It's Brad Grundy, Chief Financial Officer, and the guy responsible for technology as well. I would just simply add or reiterate what Joanne has indicated, which is, you know, when we think about technology, there's lots of things that are new and wonderful. We need to look down the road several years and ensure that whatever we do is supportable, maintainable, affordable, and those are sort of often conflicting goals. So we have to be very thoughtful around that. We do have a wide range of technology currently available in our schools, and as Joanne indicated, many of our schools are very innovative in its use, so we very much support that. But when we look at making large system changes around technology, it's back to that supportability, maintainability, and affordability over time.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our Q&A. I would like to now pass it over to our Chief Superintendent, Christopher Usi.
Well, thank you very much, Trustee Adams. To all the parents who were able to participate tonight, just a real great sense of gratitude, and thank you very much. I recognize that obviously this is new for us. We've never opened school before during a pandemic, and so we all navigate in this space. But I want you to know we're doing everything we can, certainly working with our board. And I think you heard from the team this evening in terms of all the work we're doing to ensure that your children are safe. And that is our top priority, our #1 priority. But I think the success we've had to date, it's in large measure to you as parents and guardians, and the fact that you continue to work with us, and your cooperation has been just incredible. Your children are coming to school with the proper, following the guidelines that we have in place. And I know that you're reinforcing those expectations at home, whether your child is learning remotely, hub online, or in class. I know that that level of cooperation and communication between home and school, it's really important. And I heard a number of questions tonight, again, where we're saying, if you have specific concerns about your child, as is the case always, please do start with the classroom teacher and do speak with the principal if you need to. And we're here to serve, we're here to support your child. And by working together, we'll continue to experience success. So I really wanted to have this opportunity to express my gratitude. Thank you, Trustee Adams, and to the entire board for your support as we continue to work for the success of each and every student in our school district. Thank you.
This is Chair Dennis. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you for your excellent and thoughtful questions and your participation. We really appreciate hearing what you're thinking, and appreciate all of your questions. What continues to be evident is that our parents and our school councils are still passionate about supporting their children's schools, and we're just really grateful for you and for the work that you do, for the support that you show your kids and your schools and the staff. So thank you so much for that. Tonight, if you did not get your questions answered, please feel free to reach out to your trustee. Also, as mentioned earlier this evening, trustees would be very happy to attend a virtual school council meeting, so I would encourage you to reach out with that invitation. The Board of Trustees would like to thank Communications and IT and the staff in the Office of the Corporate Secretary for their support in making this meeting possible. It wouldn't have come together without their support, so thank you so much for that. The survey link for this meeting will be sent to you on October 23rd, and we do look forward to getting your feedback, so please be watching your email boxes for that. This meeting has been recorded and will be posted to the COSC meetings page on the corporate website. Thank you again for coming. We look forward to our next COSC meeting taking place on January 20th, 2021. Good night, everybody.